Chihiro Geuzebroek, who is a grassroots activist, organizer and songwriter of Shell Must Fall, co-founder and pan-decolonial foundation Arales and Climate Liberation Bloc Collective. She is also a filmmaker and the director of climate justice film Radical Friends. So please, Chihiro.
Hallo Leiden! Ik zei hallo Leiden! Okay. I'm gonna do this in English. If you're not angry, you're not paying attention. My mother learned about climate change when she was a little girl in school. I grew up knowing failing politics are a threat to humanity. I am speaking today as a person that has been part of the climate justice movement for over a decade. The reason it took me a while to become an activist was that I was socialized in this society that doesn't respect activists, doesn't respect climate, doesn't respect women of color or indigenous people. The state does not care about stopping the violence that is required to appropriate wealth from other people's lands to live in these commodified cities. It took me a while before I could find enough connection to feel strong enough to fight the system in daylight, on the street, in creative projects, in movement building, in facing the CEO of Shell, Ben van Beurden, and telling him to his face at the AGM, we will not die quietly. I want to acknowledge all of your climate advocacy journeys. Maybe you have been the one reading many books about how capitalism is destroying Earth. Maybe you are the green sheep of the family, making each family dinner ongezellig because you bring up injustice that is standardized in our toxic society. But we need more actual out-of-the-closet activists. Activism is not only what you see here today, a beautiful street protest, but it is all year round, building from the bottom up, people power of solidarity to power shift out of systemic injustice. The system put us on a path of extinction. It requires all our skills to hack that system and rewire it towards healing. We need to actually dismantle the lullaby, the lie that says it has to get worse before it gets better. It has been getting worse for hundreds of years. And the result is mass extinction, not regeneration. The time to rise up against eco-genocide is always right now. I say right now. So I want to say to people who may be watching now from at home, join us. You know, if you're a bit shy and you're listening, inwardly nodding, but not taking action, join our collective fight for climate justice and sign up with a group today. Share contacts with one person, connect. I also have a message for environmental organizations out there. We need more green groups that are as angry about white supremacy as they are about politics of ecocide. Thank you. Because how else will the movement connect with the leadership of environmental defenders? The ones with vision and processes for environmental justice are found amongst the colonized people around the world. People of color have historical understanding of politics of eco-genocide. Eco-genocide? That's not even a word in Dutch or English. But in Swahili, there is a word, Maangamizi. It refers to the genocides on the African continent, referring to the death that colonization brought to both environments and people. In many indigenous cultures, the fight for climate justice is framed as the mission to heal all our relations. We see, however, the frames that are used in many white-stream climate actions and see that indigenous leadership and historical struggles and insights are erased or tokenized. So what frames am I talking about? The frame that our struggle is about saving the future. Without a theory of change, how we may heal from historical eco-social wounds that got us on this path of extinction, this path of disease, this path of systemic collapse. This future frame often erases the demand for reparations, the demand for land back, the demands for centering tech. That's traditional ecological knowledge. Often the demands get scaled down, scaled down, scaled down, until we only have energy transition to wind and solar. But let's note that till today, these turbines and panels are still depending on environmental destruction and exploitation and mining for metals and rare earth minerals in Congo, in China, metals in Peru, with huge human rights violations. We see the same system built on extractivism and disposability of others' lives, maybe with less emissions. We need more shutdowns, degrowth, fulfillment of climate debt owed by nation states enriched by colonial practices. Another problematic frame is the frame of innocence, bordering on ignorance, concerning violence that maintains the fossil fuel industry. I say this because the majority of climate movement was silent about the military invasion of France, aided by the Netherlands in Mali in recent years, that was by and large motivated for grabbing uranium in the region. Or the quickly forgotten colonial invasion in Iraq that killed over 1 million people, where fossil fuel companies, including Shell, were at the table already in 2000 in the US to discuss their interest in the region. So I say, what do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Thank you. I feel together, yes. I'm not alone. None of us are alone in this. The climate movement has to remember the words of Ken Saro-Wiwa. Ken Saro-Wiwa was a writer and earth defender in Ogoniland in Nigeria. And before he was executed, he wrote about the ecological warfare Shell waged on the farmers and the fishermen of the oil-rich Ogoniland. Because unfortunately, we have been living in a world of actual ecological warfare for a long time. Indigenous people from all over the world have been the ones experiencing stolen land, stolen resources, stolen labor, stolen lives, destroyed environments. While citizens in Europe, in big cities around the world, have been socialized to ignore this violence that produces the breakfast, the clothes, the computers, the construction of roads. We are educated into forgetfulness and numbness around deforestation and the wars and trade wars it required to build these cities. So, last year I was making an exposition on people power movement versus Shell, about a century of resistance against the biggest company in the Netherlands. The people that first built the movement against Shell were people who didn't know about climate change, but they knew that their house was on fire. Shell colonialism brought racism, stolen water resources, dispossessed farmers, heavy pollution. Shell had to dispossess the commons before it could promise crumbs of the privatized profit pie with so-called jobs. It is essential that climate activists learn from colonized people who, even when they were made dependent on toxic jobs, still had the courage to fight for justice collectively. I say, what do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? Shout it out! Shout it out! We are here to make noise. We need to learn from Indonesian worker strikes. In the 1940s and 50s, after Indonesia had declared independence, but the Dutch had waged illegal war, killing 3,000 people in 5 days to recolonize the oil-rich Palembang in Sumatra. The Dutch killed 100,000 Indonesian people so the Dutch could keep on exploiting their environment for profit. USA, Standard Oil, thought free Indonesia would be more profitable for them. If we study warfare, we will understand what fossil fuel power we are actually bringing to accountability. We need to learn from the huge solidarity internationally organizing to sabotage Shell gas stations when Shell was supporting an apartheid regime in South Africa. Shell keeping the apartheid tanks fueled. We need to learn from Curaçao, where workers in Shell refinery rose up against toxic exploitation after mass layoffs. And people were hired back by subcontractors of Shell for half their salary. Their uprising against colonial exploitation even brought down the government. Disconnecting from these struggles doesn't make it more simple. It makes us more weak and divided. If we would learn from these struggles, worker struggles, farmer struggles, indigenous struggles, our movement would be more strategic, informed, and more united against toxic power, and not get stuck in conversations just limited to energy transition from one extractive model of diesel cars to electric cars, which also leaves scars, and requires new sacrifice zones where life is dumped on, exploited, and destroyed. So this is a lot of heavy history, so I want to leave with a few encouragements for our movement. So I'm gonna give some encouragement, like what can help us through these challenging times to shift power. 1, DIT, do it together. Join an organization. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be committed to climate justice. Find strength in the relational tissue you are building. It is called people power. Two, connect with your lineage of struggle. We live in a state of constant overwhelm by all these injustices. Knowing your ancestors in struggle, people who paved the way, who gave their lives so you could give your grain of sand to the struggle of climate justice and advance it. These lineages of struggle keep you rooted, grounded, in a bigger perspective. And when you're rooted, you can weather the storm. 3, don't think inside the box. The box is a coffin. We need more compassionate, courageous civil disobedience activism. Conformists to status quo bring us into ever-escalating processes of extinction. Let that sink in. We need to color outside the box with creativity, courage, and collectivity. So here is where anti-oppression practices are crucial so environmental protection doesn't get co-opted to get fortress conservation at the expense of indigenous people, refugees, or others deemed disposable by the old system.
to close with the words of Assata Shakur. She said, "The rulers of this country have always considered their property more important than our lives. We should know what that means for the struggle to both protect our environment and our humanity." Assata Shakur states, "It is our duty to fight for freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but our chains." So please raise your hand and your voice and repeat after me. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. We must love each other and support each other. We have nothing to lose but politics of mass extinction.
We have nothing to lose but politics of mass extinction.
Let's win together.